Next, on this special edition of Currents News, the battle over religious freedom, a high court victory in the Diocese of Brooklyn and in the state of California. But what's next? A Christmas tradition with a twist, how you can safely watch this year's diocese tree lighting ceremony at Grand Army Plaza.
A group of immigrants claiming their wages were stolen, and they're not alone. Wage theft cases skyrocketing during the pandemic. I'm Emily Drooby. That's ahead.
Plus, an amazing glimpse into the rich history of the Catholic Church beneath the streets of New York. The special edition of Currents News starts right now. Hello, I'm Christine Persichetti, and welcome to this special edition of Currents News, highlighting the week's top stories important to the Catholic community. We begin with a landmark Supreme Court decision in favor of the Diocese of Brooklyn over COVID restrictions imposed by the state of New York. But as Currents News' Emily Drooby reports, the battle isn't over yet.
It's significant, I think even a landmark decision.
That's attorney Akiva Shapiro, part of the Diocese of Brooklyn's legal team. He says the Supreme Court injunction could have far-reaching effects, not just for New York, but for religious institutions around the country.
They were not treating us equally as others. We became non-essential, and so that became the problem.
The ruling specifically pertaining to restrictions in red and orange COVID hotspot zones where houses of worship were capped at 10 or 25 people. They say more could safely fit inside.
We did try to negotiate with the state before we did this. We asked them, look, take into account the size of our buildings. Then we limited on that basis, but they refused even to negotiate or even talk about that. So that we had no choice.
Now the lawsuit goes back to the appeals court. A hearing is scheduled for December 18th. Governor Cuomo claiming the ruling is irrelevant because the diocese no longer has churches in the red or orange zones.
The zone that they were talking about has already been moot. It expired last week. So I think this was really just an opportunity for the court to express its philosophy and politics.
But Bishop DiMarzio argues that could change at any time, and this protects them.
Because although, as the governor said, it was mute because they changed the zones, but they could put the zones in tomorrow.
It was a 5-4 decision with Justice Amy Coney Barrett in the majority.
Up until this moment, the Supreme Court, and therefore the lower courts, had been entirely deferential to state and local governments, no matter how severe the restrictions were on religious liberties.
Akiva adds now the Supreme Court is saying the Constitution must be considered when states put restrictions into place.
If there are other states out there that are doing the same thing, that are imposing stricter requirements and restrictions on houses of worship, those restrictions are now subject to challenge under this ruling.
Since the pandemic began, religious institutions in states across the country have brought up lawsuits pertaining to COVID restrictions. In California, Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone of the Archdiocese of San Francisco has already voiced strong concern against new restrictions in their state that ban indoor worship services, mentioning this New York ruling. While in New Jersey, the Supreme Court has intervened in a similar situation, demanding the state respond to a lawsuit brought on by a synagogue and a church. Emily Drooby, Currents News.
And based on the New York ruling, the Supreme Court sided with California churches in challenging the state's COVID-19 restrictions on houses of worship, sending the challenge back to lower courts. The justices are ordering federal judges to re-examine pandemic limits on church services. The decision comes after Governor Gavin Newsom prohibited most indoor services in areas hard hit by the coronavirus. A Brooklyn-based immigrant rights organization is coming to the aid of a group of workers building a luxury high-rise in Manhattan. They say they're owed tens of thousands in back pay. Currents News' Emily Drooby reports from MIDTOWN. 14 workers out $29,000. Wages they say were stolen.
We have nothing in our pockets and we really need the money.
OSMAR CRUZ is one of them, claiming he's owed for almost 2 months of work and that he and his colleagues were fired after speaking up. Desperate for help, they turned to the Workers' Justice Project, a Brooklyn-based immigrant workers' rights organization. OSMAR came to the U.S. 5 years ago.
Some people are crying because they don't have anything to feed their families.
Workers' Justice Project says wage theft has become prevalent during the pandemic. Before, they used to see about 4 cases a week. Now they see at least 12. It's happening at all kinds of jobs: delivery, construction, and domestic work. Workers' Justice Project put together this protest for OSMAR and his colleagues outside of 430 East 58th Street, where the workers earned their wages, a luxury building that pierces the sky.
Our families, our children, they are asking for food, and we don't have anything. And now it's holidays, they are asking for their gifts, and we don't have anything to give them. So that's where we protested.
Protesting for their money and for their jobs back. In this case, the workers say Casway Contracting hired a subcontractor, Mario Infante, and he hired them. The workers are holding both accountable for the money. Speaking to Currents News, the subcontractor said Casway also owes them a large sum of money, adding that as a small company, waiting for it has been very difficult. Casway Contracting has yet to return our request for comment, but they did answer the workers, calling them during the protest to set up another call, essentially the first step of negotiations.
Thank you very much.
Workers' Justice Project tells Currents News this is a step in the right direction, but the hard work is not yet done. They've still got negotiations ahead of them, and if those fall through, potentially more protests, which means more time before these workers get the money they so desperately need. In Midtown Manhattan, Emily Drooby, Currents News.
It was an important moment for the church. 13 new cardinals were named during a consistory last weekend in Rome. Among them, the first African-American cardinal, Washington Archbishop Wilton Gregory. Currents News' Jessica Easthope has more.
A historic moment for the Catholic Church and Catholics across the United States. Washington Archbishop Wilton Gregory is the first ever African-American cardinal.
It's a sign to the African-American community that the Catholic Church has a great reverence and respect and esteem for my people, people of color.
Cardinal Gregory and 12 others were given their red hats by Pope Francis during a consistory in Rome on November 28th. During his homily, Pope Francis reminded the newly named cardinals to stay humble and that their positions are first and foremost as servants of God.
E tu non sarai più il pastore vicino al popolo. Sentirai di essere soltanto l'eminenza. Quando tu sentirai quello, sarai fuori strada.
And that theme continued in the Holy Father's homily the day after the consistory, when he celebrated Advent Mass with the new cardinals.
E se siamo attesi in cielo, perché vivere di pretese terrene? Perché affannarci per un po' di soldi, un po' di fama, un po' di successo? Tutte cose che passano.
At both gatherings, there were plenty of signs of the times and the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. Many attended the consistory virtually, including 2 new cardinals who weren't allowed to travel. The cardinals from outside Europe were tested for COVID-19 and were required to quarantine for 10 days once arriving in Rome.
Drammatiche circostanze che la Chiesa e il mondo stanno attraversando ci sfidano ad offrire una lettura della pandemia che aiuti tutti e ciascuno a cogliere in questa tragedia anche l'opportunità.
Along with his new title, Cardinal Gregory and the 127 other cardinals who are under the age of 80 is now eligible to enter a conclave to elect a new pope. Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
It's time to deck the halls. For the 7th year in a row, the Diocese of Brooklyn's Christmas tree will light up Grand Army Plaza. The massive tree was delivered and set up Tuesday morning, a huge undertaking that required a whole team of people and several pieces of heavy machinery. The 35-foot-tall tree sits on top of a 5-foot-tall platform. It will be decorated with 15,000 multicolored lights. Mark Steele organized the installation, one he thinks is needed now more than ever.
It's all about the community, being able to give back to the community, and also the fact that a lot of people won't be able to celebrate Christmas the same way or the holidays the same way. and we wanted to make sure that there was something here that people could look at, experience, and enjoy.
New and special this year, the giant nativity scene that normally sits below the tree is being replaced with a sculpture called Angels Unawares, depicting the plight of migrants and refugees. It's a replica of the one that Pope Francis blessed in St. Peter's Square. It's been touring the United States, but will be spending the holidays right here in the Diocese of Immigrants. It will eventually return to its permanent home on the Catholic University campus in 2021. The annual tree lighting will look very different this year because of the pandemic. The event happening at 5 p.m. on Tuesday, December 8th at Grand Army Plaza. The statue will also be blessed that night. To keep people safe, the event is not open to the public, but it will be live streamed on netny.tv. Again, on Tuesday, December 8th, starting at 4:30 p.m. The display will remain in place until 2021. There's a lot more news headed your way. Faith in young people, the story of one Brooklyn family and how the kids brought their parents back to church. And we'll take you on a tour of the catacombs beneath old St. Patrick's that uncovers the amazing history of the church in New York City. Plus this.
Have you ever wondered what happens to old church treasures when one closes or undergoes renovations? Well, in the Brooklyn Diocese, they come here. I'm Jessica Easthope with an inside look.
Now you can help us put your faith in the news. The next time you capture a newsworthy event, send us your pictures or video. It's easy. Go to netny.tv/send us, and you may see your submission on Currents News.
A Pew Research Center study finds that kids, while most likely to be the same religion as their parents, aren't as religious. But Currents News' Emily Drooby spoke with one family in Bensonhurst where the opposite is true. In fact, the kids brought the parents back to the Catholic Church.
Left hand, right? Or right hand?
Sally Montalvo receiving a corsage. Soon she'll be receiving something even more special, grace. Sally is being confirmed at St. Dominic's Church in Bensonhurst.
A happy but nervous kind of feeling.
She's the third child in the Montalvo clan to be confirmed. A family with strong faith, but it wasn't always that way.
My children brought me deeper into my faith.
Faith, like genes, it tends to run in families. A Pew survey found Catholic parents create Catholic children, Protestant parents create Protestant children, and so on and so on. Pew found 81% of practicing Catholic parents will have kids that are too, but that same study found children to be far less religious. In fact, 19% less religious than their parents. That's not the case for the Montalvos. Anthony says his kids are actually the reason the family deepened their faith.
They were attending a program here at St. Dominic's with the youth ministry, and they had asked for volunteers during Mass one time, and I thought, well, maybe I could help out, 1 or 2 days a week.
1 or 2 days quickly grew into more.
And that turned into going to a retreat. And that turned into wanting to do more, wanting to know more, and wanting to live my faith deeper.
Now together as a family, their faith has grown.
A family that stays together, prays together.
And that faith continues to grow.
I've had my communion, I had my confession, I've had confirmation, and now it's the little one's turn.
A point of pride for house matriarch Dawn Sidoti.
I really believe that they are stronger than me. It makes me proud for all of them, including their father.
The Montalvo showing sometimes faith comes from the youngest. In Bensonhurst, Emily Drooby, Currents News.
There are many New York landmarks, the Statue of Liberty, Central Park, and of course St. Patrick's Cathedral, just to name a few. But before the majestic church on Fifth Avenue, another St. Patrick's Cathedral stood in the heart of Old New York. And if you visit that church today, you'll find a hidden treasure underneath its pews. Currents News' Jessica Easthope gives us a tour of the catacombs.
Time stands still on Mulberry and Prince. There's a hidden secret inside this church. Many don't know there's an old St. Patrick's Cathedral, which means they definitely don't know about what lies beneath.
The tradition started during the Roman Empire, where Catholics couldn't afford burial, so Catholic property owners decided to burrow tunnels underneath their very own properties.
These are the catacombs, the crypts under the now Basilica of St. Patrick's Old Cathedral, first built in 1815. Historical figures lie in coffins hermetically sealed within the walls.
Probably the most famous family down here are the Delmonicos.
The details of their lives and deaths now sealed in Tommy Wilkinson's mind.
In this country, they're very reverent places of burial. Usually you'll find trustees and benefactors, so the early families that literally supported the church. You have to understand, these were the wealthy.
Wilkinson is the tour director of Tommy's New York. The catacombs are where he spends his days, walking back and forth, giving tours above and below 7 days a week.
This is really an untapped gem that I've been blessed with the opportunity to share with the world.
There's a grand total of 1,100 Catholics.
The tours help sustain the church financially.
Every parish has to stand on its own legs. I don't think that we're truly at risk because of all of these special things that make this church so historic. Definitely the tours have become a very important part of sustaining the church.
Wilkinson's keys unlock a lot of doors. Each one opens a new opportunity to connect with the lost history of New York City and the Catholic Church.
There's also an evangelizing process. People reconnecting with their faith, people wanting to delve more into their Catholicism, people become parishioners.
Wilkinson experienced that same reconnection.
It connects the heavens to the earth.
He strayed from the church, but deep within the catacombs, he found faith again.
I became a parishioner the very day I signed that contract, being a Catholic myself, and just recognizing the importance of what I've been given here. It was more than just luck. This has certainly re-anchored me in my faith here. This means everything to me.
Bishops, priests, politicians, and even the man who introduced Italian opera to the United States are all buried down here in the catacombs. The best part, you could be buried with them.
It's the only active Catholic cemetery here in Manhattan. So imagine you can choose a niche right down here in the catacombs where you're going to become a part of history. He becomes a very close and personal friend of Abraham Lincoln.
Surrounded by the walls of the final resting place, each person feels something different during the 90-minute experience. But when all the lights go out, history comes alive. In Manhattan, Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
St. Francis College in Brooklyn Heights is seeing a record trend. Admissions are up more than 20%. This as other colleges around the nation are seeing the exact opposite. Currents News' Emily Drooby reports.
Gabrielle LORA is stepping into her future. The freshman at St. Francis College is studying for a career in education.
This is a great school and I love it so much.
She's part of the largest freshman class in the history of the school. For the 2020 school year, St. Francis had 747 incoming freshmen, a 22% jump from 2019. The school is bucking a national trend. This fall, freshman enrollment dropped 13% in the U.S. Community colleges had the steepest drop-off at almost 19%. While the pandemic financial woes and learning from home is likely to blame for some of the drop, it's actually been a trend for a while. Enrollment numbers dropping 11% over the past 8 years, experts crediting more immediate job opportunities and the high cost of college. So how did St. Francis grow? Alumnus and Director of Recruitment Rob Oliva says it's because they got creative and personal with recruiting.
We increased our communication with students by hosting numerous virtual visit sessions, personal visits with high schools, and we were able to connect with our students in a very personal way.
That recruitment style is what drew in Gabrielle.
The President Miguel was able to basically talk about the core values. Something was showing me that this is a school.
Money was also at play. Many families have been struggling financially because of the pandemic. An average 4-year private college in New York City costs $32,500. And while tuition at St. Francis is $26,688, an average student pays $13,500 after institutional aid and under $10,000 after the government aid kicks in too. 99% of their students get institutional aid. This year, the school even offered extra help through an emergency relief fund for students struggling from pandemic financial woes.
we were able to offer a very generous scholarship program to our students.
Former Terriers helping to create lots of new Terriers. In Brooklyn Heights, Emily Drooby, Currents News.
Still to come on Currents News, a treasure trove of history and faith stored inside a warehouse right here in the diocese. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. What was once an auto body shop is now a place where history and faith collide. Currents News' Jessica Easthope takes us to Bushwick, where a warehouse of wonders houses religious objects and artifacts that are no longer in use.
On a dead-end street in Bushwick, there's a hidden treasure trove of history and faith.
Joseph with the child Jesus, we have Mary.
This warehouse isn't sacred, but all of the things that make a church holy are housed in this building.
You're talking history here, and all of these objects were devotional donations from people of generations ago. So I feel like a custodian of the heritage of the diocese. This is the seal of from Bishop Ford High School.
Monsignor John Bracken, the former Vicar General and current director of the Office of Patrimony, oversees it all.
Now these are interesting pews because these came from a convent.
Whenever a church in the Brooklyn Diocese closes, undergoes a renovation, or makes a change, whatever the church doesn't need comes here.
And there is the tabernacle.
The warehouse that used to be an auto repair shop is now home to everything from the functional to the sacred. And among the statues, pews, stained glass windows, and doors are some truly special items.
In the stone are the relics of the saints.
That's how the statues get here, but how they go is more complicated.
These are the books where we categorize all the things that we have.
All of the items are photographed, documented, and appraised. Churches can take what they want in exchange for donations.
It's a minor donation.
Some bigger than others.
A bell like this gets evaluated.
There are even items that make their way across the world.
To deal with the effects of the earthquake in Haiti, and we were able to send pews and a couple of bells. We used to have a big, beautiful stainless steel statue of Lady of the Skies, and it is now in Costa Rica.
When there's no longer a need for them, churches give everything from their most precious statues even to the collection baskets. But not anyone can take them. They stay within the church community.
We don't want things that were given as devotional items by people of generations ago to wind up in the wrong places. The priest's chair with the deacon.
Though the items are removed from their original sacred places, for Monsignor Bracken, their holiness remains. Some objects date back decades, others even longer, but each holds a special piece of the Diocese of Brooklyn.
Being able to take something, to place it in a home, means that the river of faith continues to flow here richly in Brooklyn.
Monsignor Bracken is confident every item will find a home someday. Until then, they sit in the place where history and faith collide. In Bushwick, Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
That does it for this special edition of Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.